Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get the meeting to order, please? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Chapman, that the regular meeting of council, the Township of Springwater of September 4, 2019, come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. If you'd rise to sing the national anthem, please, led by Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Boy, move them. They're behind you now. Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all our sons commend. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, thy true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. Council, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Okay. Before we get into the public meeting session, I do want to welcome our new CAO, Jeff Schmidt, who we're all excited to have him start effective this week. And he's not new to the township, that's for sure. He knows the numbers and he knows the operation, and we're very excited with his ideas, his work ethic, and we're excited to be working together. So welcome aboard. Okay, start the public meeting. Can I have a mover and a seconder to call the public meeting to order? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral, that the public motion is that the public meeting of council held under Section 34 of the Planning Act for the zoning bylaw amendment application ZB 219-006 by William Perry and Cindy Fulton, and zoning bylaw amendment application ZB 219-007 by Celeste Pilon of Total Living Concepts, on behalf of Nancy Berry, be called to order at 6:37 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Okay, the purpose of the meeting. Welcome to this meeting of Springwater Township Council held in compliance with Section 34 of the Planning Act to give the public an opportunity to express their views in regard to a proposed amendment to the Township of Springwater zoning bylaw 5000 as amended. The first part of this meeting is to present amendments. Following that, an opportunity will be given to enable those who have any comments, concerns, or inquiries with regard to these proposals to make their views known to council. In addition to any comments made at this meeting, written presentations would also be welcomed by council. If a person or public body who files an appeal of a decision of the Township of Springwater in respect of a proposed zoning bylaw amendment does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions to the Township of Springwater before the proposed zoning bylaw amendments are passed, the local planning appeal tribunal may dismiss all or part of the appeal. Any persons who wish to speak should first give their name and address. All comments or questions should be addressed to the chair, myself. Oral submissions will form part of the public meeting minutes records, including the name and address of the speaker, as information collected under the Municipal Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act, and the minutes of the meeting will be posted on the township website. So we're dealing first with ZB 219-006 by William Perry and Cindy Fulton at 1712 Penetanguishene Road. I'll now call upon the Deputy Clerk, Sasha Helmke, and welcome for being up here beside us tonight, to confirm notice of this meeting and the dates on which notice was given.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 13th day of August 2019 to the owner of the subject lands and to the assessed owners of 16 properties in the Township of Springwater within 240 meters of the area to which the proposed amendment would apply, and to the assessed owners of 5 properties in the Township of Oro-Medonte within 240 meters of the area to which the proposed amendment would apply, and to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act and its regulations. Notice was also posted at the assessed property to which the proposed amendment applies at a location that was visible from Penetanguishene Road. The notice was also placed on the township's website.
Thank you. Has the planning department received any correspondence in response to the notice of the public meeting?
Items of correspondence have been received from Teresa Falcone, Development Services Assistant to Township of Oro-Medonte, in a letter dated August 14, 2019, and from Alice Coleman, Municipal Planning Coordinator, Enbridge Grass, Inc., in a letter dated August 14, 2019. Details of the comments can be found in the agenda package.
I will now call upon Deborah Ann Lisk, Township Planner, to give a brief explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposal.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Zoning Bylaw Amendment ZB 2019-006 is an application to amend the zoning of 1712 Penetanguishene Road from the residential rural to a residential rural exception zone to permit an accessory living accommodation for the applicant's family member in a proposed detached garage. The exception also recognizes an increase in floor area and height for accessory buildings. The applicant has secured funding from the County of Simcoe for the creation of this second unit. No adverse comments have been received through the circulation process. Staff have also reviewed all applicable policies and have provided a recommendation report on tonight's council agenda, recommending approval of the application, subject to any comments received tonight. Staff have also included a holding provision on the zone to ensure that all applicable septic permits are approved prior to the building permit being issued for the structure. That concludes all my comments for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lisk. I'll now call upon any members of the public wishing to ask questions or make comments regarding this application. Please come forward to the microphone and state your name and address. Okay, it doesn't appear like anybody will be coming forward. Do any members of council have questions or comments regarding this application? No? Okay, well, thank you for attending the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and showing interest in this matter. The next matter we're dealing with is ZB 219-007 by Celeste Pilon of Total Living Concepts on behalf of Nancy Berry at 14 Roy Hickling Drive. I'll now call upon the Deputy Clerk to confirm notice of this meeting and the dates on which notice was given.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 13th day of August 2019 to the owner of the subject lands and to the assessed owners of 34 properties in the Township of Springwater within 120 meters of the area to which the proposed amendment would apply, and to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act and its regulations. Notice was also posted at the assessed property to which the proposed amendment applies at a location that was visible from Roy Hickling Drive. The notice was also placed on the Township's website.
And has the Planning Department received any correspondence in response to the notice of the public meeting?
Items of correspondence have been received from Alice Coleman, Municipal Planning Coordinator, Enbridge Gas, Inc., in a letter dated August 14, 2019. Details of the comments can be found in the agenda package.
Thank you. I will now call upon Celeste Pilon of Total Living Concepts to give a brief explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposal. If you please come to the mic and just get a chair, pull the two mics together for the best reception. And thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Celeste Pilon from Total Living Concepts. Mr. and Mrs. Berry, who are here tonight, have enlisted me to assist them with the process of rezoning their property to include an in-law suite. They recently purchased the home at 14 Roy Hickling Drive in Minising. Here, they live together with their daughter and granddaughter. They will all be sharing the same entrance, but they hope to create a space downstairs that will house a separate kitchen for their daughter. In order to proceed with this renovation, the rezoning of the property must be assessed. If there's any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Ms. Pilon. I will now call upon members of the public wishing to ask questions or make comments regarding this application. Please come to the microphone and state your name and address. Okay, there don't seem to be any public questions. Do any members of council have questions or comments regarding this application? I do have one, Ms. Pilon. Will there be a separate entrance from the outside to the downstairs?
No, they'll be all sharing the main entrance of the home, and it's just the shared staircase that goes down.
Thank you. All right, thank you for attending the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and showing interest in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn this public meeting? Councillor Cabal, Councillor Ritchie. That this public meeting of council held under Section 34 of the Planning Act for the zoning bylaw amendment application ZB 219-006 by William Perry and Cindy Fulton, and zoning bylaw amendment application ZB 219-007 by Celeste Pilon of Total Living Concepts on behalf of Nancy Berry be adjourned at 6:41 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder to give directions with respect to this public meeting? Councillor Cabral and Councillor Chapman. That council, having held a public meeting in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, P13 as amended on a zoning bylaw amendment application ZP 219-006 by William Perry and Cindy Fulton, having noted correspondence and input received, direct that the application be approved and that the appropriate documents be submitted to council for consideration. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder for the public meeting in accordance with Section 34? Councillor Chapman, Councillor Moore. That council, having held a public meeting in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 P13 as amended on a zoning bylaw amendment application ZB 219-007 by Celeste Pilon of Total Living Concepts on behalf of Nancy Berry, having noted correspondence and input received, directed the application be approved and that the appropriate documents be submitted to council for consideration. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, next we move on to a delegation from Tracy Carter of Child Advocacy Center of Simcoe, Muskoka, requesting financial support. So Ms. Carter, welcome. Okay. Good evening.
Good evening,
Hello.
Mayor and members of council. I would also like to introduce, if I may, I'm Tracy Carter, Executive Director of the Child Advocacy Center, Simcoe, Muskoka. And I have Inspector Brown with me. I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm the detachment commander for the Huron US Detachment, which includes the Springwater, policing the Springwater Township as well.
Welcome, Inspector.
Thank you, sir.
Now I hope I can run this presentation okay, so bear with me. Thank you again for allowing us the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I'm not sure how many of you have heard about the Child Advocacy Center. I feel that this region actually is pretty fortunate to have a center like this to help support kids. So let me tell you about it. So the reason I'm speaking with you here today is to seek $2 per child and youth that reside in the township of Springwater for a funding total of $11,690. You have, in 2016, census reflects that you have 5,845 children and youth in your township. Why are we seeking this funding? We hope to advance and sustain a model of excellence in child abuse investigations in the Huronia West region, really all of Simcoe County and Muskoka, which is our catchment area. So what is a Child Advocacy Center? It's internationally recognized, a best practice model for investigations into alleged physical and or sexual abuse, sexual exploitation, or trafficking of children and youth. So this can be a bit of a tough subject matter for some. I recognize that, but I think it's important that we are able to talk about this. We offer a safe, neutral, child and youth-friendly setting where these investigations take place. With trauma-informed care, which is critically important to supporting young people during these investigations. And we offer really wraparound support and multidisciplinary teams. As you see, police for us is a key partnership. We support victims, witnesses, and the families beyond initial disclosure through any criminal justice system and beyond. Some centers serve to age 18. We serve to age 24. And that change has been made fairly recently with the, where we're seeing more of victims of human trafficking in our region. And that does involve sometimes the older youth. We also do help educate our community to help prevent further victimization. So some pictures. You'll see that is our medical room. So we have specialized pediatrician from the Regional Center for Suspected Child Abuse and Neglect that come into our center and do follow-up care with kids. You'll see on the right-hand side, that's the interview room, or we tell the kids that's the talking room. And there's the recording equipment. Is there anything you'd like to add as I go through? Okay.
I'll compliment you.
Okay. So why do we have these centers? Why is this important? We have found that the centers and this approach to care does aid evidence gathering. If a child is more comfortable in a more comfortable environment having this discussion, hopefully they're more comfortable providing a fulsome description of events, which of course can lead to aiding the prosecution process, certainly benefits victim and witness wellness, reduces stress and trauma for investigative professionals, and it does help boost police capacity because we have advocates on site that make sure that calls are made often as needed to the caretakers of the children. So we really help to support the professionals involved in that follow-up piece. We hope to improve community safety and advance practice. We offer training, case reviews, so on.
As you know, Your Honor, one of the main commitments from the Police Service Act is for us to be looking after victims of crime within the policing community. It's one of our responsibilities. However, at the same time, we must acknowledge there's certain expertise we don't have. And these initial contacts, I believe that if they are not carried out correctly and professionally with the best potential support for the victims, we can actually get them entering into repeated contacts in the future of not a positive nature. So the first contact, the support provided initially will have a sustainable effect, which will, apart from it being the right thing to do to support the victims of crime, it also ensure that we are not revisiting these individuals in different capacities in the future, which then benefits the community as well.
Thank you. So I included this article only for information purposes, but really it was thinking about that question I often get, this doesn't happen in our communities. Sadly, these types of crimes happen everywhere. So again, why child advocacy centers? So we have staff on site. They're trauma-informed. These child and youth and family advocates are there to answer questions. They're a neutral professional, not involved in the investigation. They're not a children's aid worker. Very, very important to the well-being and next steps with that family. We ensure that they receive referrals to appropriate services, and there are services, but getting access to care in a timely manner can be challenging, especially for someone that is going through a traumatic event. And we do reassure them they're not alone, and we help support their healing. So provincially, there are 6 centers currently open in Ontario, only 6. There's 8 more in development. We got started in Simcoe Muskoka about 5 years ago through seed funding through the Department of Justice Canada. The Department of Justice Canada still does provide limited annualized funding. We're doing a lot of fundraising at this point, which is really tough from the perspective of an executive director on one hand, supporting staff and supporting families, and on the other, worrying about money. So I'm hoping that I can get some support in this community to help keep us going. And here are some numbers. And I was putting these numbers together this time last year for another presentation I was doing. Actually, it was to the city of Barrie. And I went back to this in August, and it reminded me that in this past year, we've facilitated over 400 forensic interviews with children and youth in our center. So just to give you an idea of the need for service. So internationally, this model is gaining momentum. 20 countries worldwide. It actually originated in the US, and they now have over 1,000 centers. Their aim is to have a child advocacy center in every county. And I think they're getting there. 40 child advocacy centers open or in development across Canada, and they do have various funding models supporting them. So in conclusion, I hope that I've provided enough information today to describe the work that we do, why it's important, and hopefully have you folks determine that it's worth investing in.
And if I may, in conclusion, as you're aware, we do have the mental health response unit within the Huron US detachment to ensure we are providing the right support to individuals who are in crisis. Part of that is also to assist in navigating within the system. So it's a gateway to the system to navigate and get the appropriate support. This program complements that system of making sure we have the right people in the right place, providing the best level of support and consistent, professionally accredited support to people who are experiencing either in crisis or victims of crime.
Now, if I could just add that police stations are fine establishments and very dedicated officers, but they are not the place for children, in my humble opinion.
And supported.
Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks. Thank you, Ms. Carter and Inspector Brown. I'll open it up to questions, comments by council. Councillor Cabral.
Through the chair, thank you very much. I do appreciate your presentation, and certainly when I was reviewing it, it took me back to a time when these facilities were not available, and times when we were involved with young people, children at times, sexually abused or physically abused, and had to take them to either a hospital or a police station, very institutional, which really didn't help the situation at all, because in their minds, I think they felt that they'd done something wrong just being in that setting. So it's good to know that this is out there, and it's been a long time coming. I know that initially some police services installed and put into their facilities what they called soft rooms, which was a big step up at the time, I got to admit, but it did not take away from having to attend at a hospital, generally in the emergency area. So I certainly appreciate the fact that this is available, but one of the questions I do have is, are other policing agencies such as South Simcoe or Barrie Police, can they avail themselves of this service as well, or are they part of it now? I'm just wondering in their situations whether or not they have access to this as well.
Thank you for that question, through you, Mayor Allen. We now have two centers, one based out of Aurelia and the other in the city of Barrie. To answer your question, yes. So absolutely, Barrie City Police as well as South Simcoe Police are important partners in this work as well.
Councillor Hanna.
Through the chair, please. On slide 1, it says the Child Advocacy Center, Simcoe/Muskoka, is seeking annual funding $2 per child, youth brackets, $5,845 in Township of Springwater. Am I reading that there's almost 6,000 of our young residents in Springwater that are in need, or is that all in Simcoe County?
Ms. Carter.
Thank you for that question, through you, Mayor. That number is the number of children and youth in the Township of Springwater as at the 2016 census. So that's...
So thank you. So that's not definitely children that are in need, that's just the number of youth in our township.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Might I add
Yes,
something
follow on.
to that? Follow that? So the idea is, I looked at many different approaches to seeking funding, and this was, I call it a funding formula, because I believe there is a collective responsibility in all of us and all of our regions to support these children. So I am seeking $2 per child and youth across the County of Simcoe and District of Muskoka, in the cities, townships, towns, And that $2 per child is to help ensure access to care for any child or youth that may need it.
Follow on?
Thank you. So I don't want to give the impression I don't think this is a great idea. I agree with George that our history would tell us that this is a great thing. I was involved in an area where you either took the young people to church and occasionally had to take them home with you if they had no place else to go. So I support this. I just was questioning the funding and, you know, that if we had 6,000 people in our township that were in need, that was a concern to me.
Ms. Carter, from your presentation, I understood the organization is about 5 years old. Is that the organization 5 years old?
That is correct.
And it was initially funded and ongoing funding by the Department of Justice Canada. Have they increased their funding as you've grown, or what's the status of their funding of your organizations?
The funding from Justice Canada has decreased. The Department of Justice Canada provides seed funding to get these centers going. And what they have expressed to me is the feeling that it's up to the communities to keep them going.
And do you have a budget? Do you do an annual budget?
Absolutely, yes.
Be interested in seeing that, just to get a perspective of your revenues and costs.
I would be happy to share an audited financial statement if you would like. I am happy to address any questions regarding finances at any time.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Chatham.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just a question. So I take it this is your first time asking us for financial support, correct?
Ms. Carter?
Yes, it is.
And follow on, are you asking for financial support from other, like City of Barrie, District of Muskoka, and other surrounding areas?
Go ahead.
Absolutely. Yes, I've been out and about, yes.
If I may add, when I was approached in regards to the initiative, I supported it because we are accessing these resources increasingly. It's exponentially increasing. The Association of Chiefs of Police has endorsed this as the gold standard in supporting our communities, and the intent, Your Worship, is most likely you will see the same presentation during the CPAC meeting on the 26th of September, because we'll be approaching the Wasaga Beach and Clairview, which is within my area, for the same model to support the program.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Inspector. Yep. So would you have would we be able to see the financials, as you say, but also your sources of funding from different municipalities, cities? Do you publish that, or do you have a website with it on, or just to get a better feel for the total organization and the support you've been getting?
I'm happy to share that. I don't believe the audited financial statement goes into that level of revenue streams, but I can certainly supply that, no problem at all.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, yeah, Councillor Cabral?
Just one, thanks very much, through the chair, to the inspector, actually. I would take it that, as you've said, you're finding that you're utilizing these resources more frequently. Prior to these resources being made available to your law enforcement sector, would you say that this has provided better access, not only provided better access and support to the victim, but also providing your officers with more support to them, in that they can tend to other duties oftentimes more quickly, because there's someone else there to provide that support to the victim rather than your own people?
Absolutely, because they become the advocate for the victims as well. They can provide, give officers more insight as to different approaches. And really, at the end, it's a true partnership in which we recognize at times we have to be the followers and be supportive of the program. Also, what this does is we always look for consistency in how we interact with youths at a high standard. And my concern is, if we have these different degrees of support. I think, quite frankly, I believe it will interfere in our ability to even prosecute with consistency within the justice system, as well as providing support to the victims. So that's we are looking at maintaining one standard, and is the best standard that's available today.
Thank you. Thank you again. Oh, yes, Ms. Carter.
My apologies, if I could add just one point regarding numbers. And another reason that we're here today, we've had a 77% increase in demand for service over the last year, a 255% increase over the 2 years, over the last 2 years. So this too is part of why right now we are grossly underfunded. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation? Councillor Moore, Councillor Chapman. That the delegation from Child Advocacy Center of Simcoe Muskoka be received. All those in favor? Carried. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Next, we move into question period. So members of the public are invited to ask questions of council or make comments regarding an item on the agenda. Each person may speak for a maximum of 2 minutes, and question period will not exceed a total of 10 minutes. As we said earlier, if there are questions with respect to what we were discussing in the special meeting in advance or comments, those will be included as well. Anybody want to come forward? Yes, please come forward. State your name and address and your question, please.
My name is Janet Noble. Address is 1 Marnie Lane in Fergusonville. I would like to thank council for allowing me to speak. I had put forward the petition to post a reduced speed limit on Floss Road 4 East. We've been there 31 years, and there's been a substantial change in our dynamic. Anyone familiar with the area would know that we've gone from a small cul-de-sac of about a dozen houses to a community that is now a circle with about 50 houses. We have a lot of people who have young children, since it's come full circle, and those of us that have been there forever had retired and their children have moved. We now have a new community of various ages, and also houses adjacent to Marnie Lane. It has always been a problem with the speed limit going through the 4th, being used as a shortcut to 93 or the 400, and now we have a brick factory at the end of the road. There has always been a challenge for anybody coming off 27 North to Floss Road 4 East to try out their how fast can I go speed limit. And now I believe we have at least 4 school buses attending our area, starting at about 7 in the morning. We have people who walk their dogs as well as their kids, including residents from Floss Road 4 West and the highway. Roughly 40 dogs, maybe 30 children. I think this benefits everybody, and then if it is posted, it is easier for the police to enforce it. What I would ask to be added, which is not on the proposition, is a sign that says Community Safety Zone. There is one that I have seen at Snow Valley Community on Seaton Road, who is also posted at 50. And I think that would be a valid request given the amount of students we have.
All right, thank you very much for the question. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you very much. Two points. First, I'm assuming you were out again last night with your literature, because I was receiving more texts from people, so thank you for, they were saying that they had people knocking, and that was wonderful. And the other point was, when you said community safety zone sign, are you talking about the one that goes underneath the welcome, right, like right now, like the
No.
Phelpston? It's an actual community, separate from the
Yes,
one that
it's
says?
I believe it says Community Safety Zones fines increased.
Okay, so that's separate from the one that I was
Yes.
thinking. Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cabral?
Thank you very much. I understand the situation in respect of that, but I also am conflicted because these are rural roadways, and they are through fares, and they are meant and designed to ferry people from point A to point B. And although that one is adjacent to the new development in off of Marnie Lane, I do have some difficulty with other users of the roadway and in the community that do utilize these roads, and I know that that is a busy one, and I do have some concerns about our present traffic bylaw regarding speed, and I just do have some concerns that it might not necessarily be appropriate in every situation. So I just kind of have that thought that it's not necessarily always appropriate to lower it to a specific speed. Another speed might be more appropriate is what I'm getting at. So I just kind of felt that in all fairness to you, that those were my feelings on that one. I have another one in my area, and I have people on the road that are saying they do not want it reduced. So that's just trying to be fair to you and let you know where I'm kind of sitting on this right now. Thank you.
Okay, we'll be discussing that further at 11.2 in our action reports, but we do appreciate your comments. Thank you.
If I could answer, Mr. Cabral?
Yes.
The request is not to reduce the speed limit on the whole of Floss Road 4 East, just through the immediate Marnie Lane subdivision. And I don't think that reducing it in that particular area is going to be that big of an impediment to through traffic.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Any other questions? Come forward, sir, please.
My name is Willy Verum, long-time occupant on Marnie Lane.
Can you just lean
And-
forward, sir, and speak into the mic there a little
Yeah,
bit so we
I'm
can catch your
sorry.
voice? Thank you.
Is that better?
That is better, thank you.
Good. I'll have to
Sir,
excuse
I
my,
would, can you repeat the name solely
Yeah,
so we get at the
okay.
proper spelling, please?
I'll have to, okay, I'll repeat my name, Willy, V-I-L-L-Y. That's Danish for Willy.
Okay,
Verum, V-A-E-R-U-M.
thank you.
Verum. I wrote a letter about exactly the same problem as Janet Noble has just been specifying. And I'd like to read it because there may be a little bit of a different meaning to this. And I actually sent a letter to Councillor Ritchie, a copy of this letter, along with a copy to Doug Downey and to Township of Springwater and Ontario Provincial Police on Wasaga Beach, since I did not know whom to go to with this, and also I published this letter in Springwater News. It's about half a year ago. And it's a short letter, I'll just read it for you. And as a close residents of Highway 27 Floss Road 4 Junction in Fergusonvale, it is my opinion that the traffic regulation of this location with adjacent roads is so inadequate that it now presents no less than an accident waiting to happen. Let me just elaborate on this with the accident. When we approach number 27 highway from Floss Road 4 East, where I live, and there is an opposing car coming towards the same junction, it appears that nobody knows the rule of law, because half of those that approach you, they wait, even if maybe they had a right of way to go first. And half of those that approach you, they drive where they should have waited. it appears that many people think this is a four-way stop, which it isn't. So instead of observing the normal laws of the road, it really presents an accident waiting to happen.
Okay,
And
Mr.
that's
Ver-
why I have written further here.
Mr. Verum,
Yes.
as I said at the outset, we're limited to 2 minutes for each question, so
Okay,
just maybe you
okay.
could summarize
All right.
the rest of the point you're
Well,
making. Thank you.
The junction has further seen a yearly incremental traffic increase, and I don't think the lone 70-kilometer speed limit on number 27 from either side is sufficient, and I would really think a light regulation would be required to avoid accidents. That's my main point. And the other points I have specified here have more or less been dealt with by Janet Knoll, so I abstain from reading that also.
Okay,
Yeah.
appreciate the question
Okay.
and comment. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments, sir?
No questions.
Thank you.
Good evening, councillors.
Good evening.
My name's Martin Ballerhoven. I'm just building a new house on Floss Road 4. A week ago, on a Friday afternoon, I had a building inspector come in, doing an occupancy inspection, and the covers of my furnace are taken off, and they're off. And after the inspector left, me and my wife were talking about everything that happened. And she turns the furnace on, the furnace doesn't work because the covers are not on. And to put it in perspective, my wife had one of those heart attacks where you only have a 10% survival rate in January. So she's worried the whole weekend about this. Monday morning, the HVAC guy comes over and checks everything out, and everything is fine. I had a meeting with your building department, your head, Nick, and he says that's part of their job. Inspect the inside of the furnace. And I asked why, and he says, well, because some people are dishonest, some builders, and they put the wrong size in, but the serial number and the model number are on the outside of the furnace. It tells you everything you need to know about the furnace. Somebody who is not qualified in gas should keep their hands off of a furnace. The same as somebody that's not qualified in electricity should keep their hands off of the fuse panel. You shouldn't take covers off things that you know nothing about. This is an accident waiting to happen. I think the policy should be changed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the comments. We've taken notes on it and we'll follow up.
One other thing, I should say, there was no charge for the HVAC guy to come out because it was a new furnace, although Nick was kind enough to say he would have paid for it if. Now, this has nothing to do with the building inspector or anything like that. This only has to do with the policy of the building department.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you for the comment. Okay, we're moving on to 8.
Byron Hiscock, 1032 Floss Road 4 East. I missed the end of the speed limit thing.
One second, sir. Did you catch that name? You used-
Byron Hiscock.
Okay, thank you.
Speaking earlier, this gentleman here spoke of where he lives and people don't want their speed limit changed because they don't like it. Well, different dynamics or different areas, right? We're talking about 700 meters of 80 kilometers down to 50 or whatever the recommendation is. It's a residential neighborhood now. There's new houses going in. Me and my family, it's hard to even cross the road. Transport trucks, cars. It's a fast route from 27 over to the 400. So dynamics change from one to the other. Why don't you drive up Floss Road 4 one day and just take a little drive for yourself and see?
Okay,
Just
sir.
for your own.
Sir, so you're supporting the,
Absolutely.
yep,
Yeah.
okay, all right. Thank you
Thank
for
you
the
very much.
comment. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 8.2, minutes of boards and committees and organizations. Can I have a mover and seconder for receipt of the minutes, boards and committees? Councillor Ritchie? Oh, sorry. We're moving back up. 8.1, mover and seconder to approve the minutes of council. Councillor Ritchie and Deputy Mayor Coghlan, that the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented. Minutes of the regular meeting of council of August 7, 2019. Any questions with respect to these? All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to receipts and minutes of boards and committees. Can I have a mover and a seconder for those, please? Councillor Moore, Councillor Chapman, that the minutes of boards and committees and other organizations listed herein be received as information, being the minutes of the Elmvale BIA meeting of June 20, 2019. Any questions? All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to 9, item 9, correspondence and information items. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the correspondence and information items? And are there any items wanting to be pulled or commented on? Councillor Hannah?
I just have a question at 9.3.
9.3, okay. 9, so, yeah. 9.3, the sponsorship request, Bradford Greenhouse? Yes, okay. Any others? Okay, Councillor Hannah, 3.
Thank you. They're requesting some funding to support their golf tournament. I just want to find out if we are in fact doing any sponsorship for that golf tournament, and if we are, would it be approved by council and not just an automatic gift, if you like?
What are your thoughts on that, Councillor Hannah?
I believe that we might have set a precedent by donating $500 to the Warden's Golf Tournament, but we run our own golf tournament to raise funds for charity organizations, and while it would be nice to be able to support others, I believe that we're not in a position to be given tax dollars to do this sort of thing.
So I think what we'll do is we'll pull that and deal with the rest of the items and deal with it separately to get for any further discussion with respect to that. Okay, so we have a mover and seconder. So a mover and a seconder for the other items in the correspondence information, please. Councillor Ritchie, Deputy Mayor Coghlan, that the correspondence and information item listed herein be received as information. County of Simcoe 7th Annual Newcomer Recognition Awards. The Severn Sound Environmental Association call for nominations for environmental heroes. The letter from the Environment and Climate Change Canada behinds Emerald Recovery Strategy for Endangered Species. The letter to the Ministry of Transport regarding comments of Highway 26, a resurfacing and widening of Hamner Road to Simcoe Road 27th, and the AMO delegation's follow-up letters, with the exception of 9.1.3 to be dealt with separately. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, with respect to this item 3, any other comments from other council members with respect to it? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you. I guess my comment here would be very similar to Councillor Hannah's, whether or not this is something that council should be doing on a regular basis, because it is taxpayer dollars, no matter, what pocket it comes from. So that would be my concern as well, is whether or not we should be moving forward with these particular sponsorship items.
Other comments? Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Thank you, Marilyn. And I agree that we need to be responsible with the money, but also when other municipalities reach out and sponsor our charities, we need to reciprocate that. We need to work with our neighboring municipalities within the communities. This one, for example, I'm not sure if Bradford Greenhouses were asked, but they weren't a sponsor of our tournament, and I do believe in reciprocation, and I think that when other municipalities come forward and support our charities within our community, we need to do the same for them. Not need to, we should consider doing the same for them.
Other comments? Councillor Moore?
Just to clarify, Bradford Greenhouse is in my ward, Ward 4, right?
Thank you. What I was saying is wasn't sure. I know that in the past they had been a sponsor of the Springwater Swing. I wasn't sure if they were a sponsor this year or not. That was my reciprocation, was what I was getting at.
Councillor Hannah?
I guess I just need to clarify, when we sponsor other municipalities, that's different than sponsoring a private company here that's running a golf tournament. I agree, we always attend and contribute by attending the golf tournaments and paying the green fees and whatever else we do there. But when we attend private golf tournaments for other companies, I think that's different. And I don't think we should be going down that road, because once we open the door, where are we going to say no?
Okay, give us a second here. Yeah, do you want to make a motion then, Councillor Hannah, with respect to this?
I don't think it's necessary for me to make a motion unless the rest of the council believes so. I just want to make sure that we are not doing it, and if we are going to do it, that it becomes something that the council should discuss and not just done by somebody else's councillor's funding, for example.
Yeah, we have to have a motion with respect to this to get it dealt with. That's what we are doing now, is discussing it at the council. So we need a motion with respect to this to be able to move on. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
I'd like to put forward a motion that this information be received.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hannah? Any other discussion with respect to it? All those in favor? Carried. Item 10, committee recommendations. Deputy Mayor Coughlin moved this, seconded by Councillor Moore, that the Council of the Township of Springwater hereby supports the recommendation from the Agriculture Advisory Committee from August 8, 2019 regarding a reduction of the agricultural tax rate, and that a letter be sent to the County of Simcoe requesting the County Council review and consider a reduction in the agricultural tax rate. Any questions or comments with respect to this? Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, and I would suggest that if this goes forward, one way of offsetting the loss of revenue there is once agricultural land has been approved and for development, that it no longer be rated as taxed at the agricultural rate. It should be taxed at a residential rate.
Okay. So once it's, repeat that again, please.
Once agricultural land has been approved for development, it's no longer going to be agriculture, it's been approved for development, it should no longer be taxed at agricultural rate. It should be now taxed at residential rate. That's what it's going to be, and if it's still being farmed, that's one thing, but as we know, there's developers sitting on agricultural land for a number of years and still paying agricultural rate, but yet it's basically residential land.
So Director Spagnol, the timing and the process of doing that would be, I mean, it'd have to be sold and then they'd have to make the application to develop it? Is that what would be the logical time to consider switching the tax rate?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The tax rates and the establishment of the tax rates aren't as part of my expertise. However, when we do get inquiries from MPAC about the status of land, they typically ask for the designation of the property and the zoning. So once the designation is changed from an agricultural designation to an urban residential designation, and the zone is changed from agricultural to residential, those would typically be the triggers from a land use perspective as to when there would be a need to update the taxes to reflect the future development of those lands.
So can you get the wording of the amendment then, please, Deputy Clerk, with Councillor Hannah? To just change, I believe he's proposing an amendment to this motion. that's happening, I'll get to CAO Schmidt, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to clarify on what Councillor Hannah is asking for, is it's not the township or the county's responsibility to change the assessment on the property. That's MPAC. So MPAC, once they get the determination from the municipality, then they go ahead and change the assessment from agricultural or farmland to residential. So it's really, we trigger it with the application that comes forward, but then it's MPAC who actually goes ahead and makes the change in the assessment, which then has an impact on the taxation, if you will. So there's a bit of a process there that has to be followed. So the township and the county really doesn't have the say as to when
What he's asking for instead of my hand.
somewhat, yes.
Okay. We better, Councillor Hannah, there's, I don't think you heard the last point that CAO Schmidt made with respect to this. So can you summarize it again, please, CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Councillor Hannah, just to clarify, so the township really doesn't have the authority to change assessment. Well, we don't have the authority to change assessment. That's through MPAC, the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. So when this happens, typically information is provided to MPAC, and then MPAC makes the determination as to when the assessment changes from farmland to residential. So the county and or the Township of Springwater really doesn't have the authority to make that change, what you're asking for. It's really MPAC makes that change in the assessment and then ultimately has the taxation impact at the end of the day. So there is a trigger that they go by, MPAC goes by, but again, we don't change when the assessment happens. That's MPAC.
Councillor Hannah?
From the chair to you. So my question would be, then this whole recommendation is kind of mute, that we're asking the county to consider reducing the agricultural farm tax.
Director, CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, yes and no. This has come forward to the county multiple times in the past. The county does dictate tax ratios, and I think that's exactly what's being requested here. Is not necessarily a reduction in the tax, although it says tax rate, it's more of a reduction in the tax ratio. And that's dictated through the county, and the county definitely has authority over that.
I'll just add a bit of background information for council. On March 26, 2019, there was a county report on the 2019 tax ratios and rates. I made a motion to refer to staff for a report assessing a phase-in reduction over 4 years from 0.25 to 0.20 for agricultural, and that would therefore increase other areas, as has happened in the past. That was defeated narrowly. And then on May the 25th, 2019, John Morrison and Mr. Lafort, who's with the Simcoe County Federation of Agriculture, board members and volunteers, presented to County Council a delegation with respect to this topic and reviewed the tax ratios and asked the county to consider reducing the tax ratio from 0.25 to 0.20. So this came forward again from the Agriculture Liaison Committee as a request through a motion to have this council write a letter basically of support to look into the reduction for the next budgeting process by the county from the 0.25%. Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. I'm not trying to dispute with the Agriculture Advisory Committee, but what I'm trying to do is suggest that if there's going to be a tax loss, the rest of the residential people in Springwater Township are going to be impacted. One way of avoiding that impact is when farmland has been approved for and sold and approved for development, it no longer be taxed at agricultural rate. It now be taxed at residential rate. Therefore, the residents of Springwater who pay taxes are not being disadvantaged, if you like, because the agricultural farmland is being taxed at a lower tax rate. So I'm just trying to balance it so everybody is sort of getting a fair treatment here.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, and through you. Also, on top of the residential rates, it's our business and industrial rates that are also, the commercial rates that are increasing. If you take money from somewhere, you have to get it from somewhere else. I'm just looking for clarification on, from what I understand, agricultural land is agricultural land until a subdivision or application is submitted, and then at that point, that trigger moves forward. So I'm curious at what, if it's agricultural land, regardless if it's for speculation or they're doing their $7,500 a year to make sure that it's still agriculture, there is no other trigger point. So I'm curious as to what we would be asking, or what we would be asking of them, because if someone buys it to sit on it and make a whole bunch of money, as long as they're paying the agricultural taxes and earning their $7,500 a year, I don't see how we can say, oh, we think you're gonna develop that, or we know they are, but until they submit that application for a subdivision, I don't know how we can force that upon them.
If I may, that's why I said once it's been sold and approved for development, that would be the trigger in my mind.
CAO Schmidt, do you see this as being a workable potential amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think typically, and I can confirm with MPAC, that is the trigger. So essentially, when the property is sold and there is an application for development that comes through, that information is provided to MPAC, and that's the trigger where MPAC will change the assessment on the property from farmland to residential, and then that triggers us, whereby when the assessment comes to the township and we tax, it's assessed as residential, and hence we hit them with the residential tax rate. We cannot go ahead and apply a residential tax rate to an agricultural or a farmland assessment. Can't do it. Can't do it. We don't have the authority to do that.
So, CAO Schmidt, you see this as being a workable, logical, potential amendment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think what's before you tonight simply should be sent to the county for them to consider and leave it at that. I don't think the amendment to essentially do what Councillor Hanna is suggesting, I'm not sure that they have the authority to do that, to be honest with you.
Okay, Councillor Hanna, you either need to withdraw the motion or get a seconder.
I don't think I'm going to get a seconder, but I still think that it's information that should be forwarded to the county for consideration.
Okay. Yes. Let me just read it so people are aware of it, okay, please. Moved by Hanna, seconded by Cabral, that the motion before council be amended as follows. Add paragraph, and offset any loss revenue by increasing tax on farmland to residential once sold and approved for development. Go ahead, Councillor Cabral.
Thank you. Just sitting back listening. I agree with the outcome that we're looking for in order to satisfy submitting to county council in order later on to see if there's an opportunity from developers who quite often, get the development and then sit on it, is that might be something that's viable. I don't see any problem with trying to do it that way. So I'm prepared to second his motion.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That's defeated. Now we're voting on the main motion that counts the Township of Springwater hereby supports the recommendation from the Agricultural Committee of August 8, 2019 regarding a reduction of the agricultural tax rate, and that a letter be sent to the County of Simcoe requesting that County Council review and consider a reduction to this agricultural tax rate. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to 11.1 or 11 action reports. we have 11.2 through to 11.12. There was an extra one added today. Can I have a mover and seconder to get those on the table? Councillor Moore, Councillor Chapman. Anybody like to discuss or pull certain items? Deputy Mayor Coughlin
11-2.
and Councillor Cabral. You'd like it discussed or pulled? Pulled. Councillor,
Same one, 11-2.
any others? Okay, so we will vote on the recommendations contained in 11. Be approved as presented. 11.2, 11.3, OP 218-002, ZB 218-003, Vesper Valley Estates Phase 3, part of Lot 13, Concession 9, and part of Block 64, RP 51M-965, Block 47, RP 51M-913, and Part 7, RP 51M-1019. 11.4, Estates of Anton Mills Red Line Revision, and zoning bylaw amendment, ZB 219-004, regarding Fernbrook Homes. 11.5, OP 217-002, and ZB 217-007, regarding Apto Glen. 11.6, Cameron Estates Reduction and Transfer of Securities. 11.7, Parkland Dedication Bylaw Update. 11.8, Line Fences Act Proposed Changes to Fence Viewing. 11.9, Proposed New Cemetery Bylaw. 11.10, Digital Radio Upgrades. 11.11, Wide Area Moor Replacement. And 11.12, the Lift Hold Application for Cameron Estates Subdivision Phase 2. With the exception of 11.2 to be dealt with separately. Councillor Cabral?
I apologize, Mayor Allen, the one regarding the cemetery bylaw, I did have one comment to make on that before we move
question?
forward. Yes.
Okay, go
yes.
ahead and make that question, please.
Thank you. Upon reading the bylaw, I noticed that I believe from November through to the following end of the year, because there's no road maintenance there, basically the bylaw creates a situation where anybody who enters there in the wintertime, whether it be on foot or by vehicle, is going to be trespassing. My concern is that I could see and envision times when someone has passed away in the wintertime and families may like to go to the cemetery to, have some remembrance or some form of visitation at the time when the person passed away. I just have a problem with that particular aspect of it, because it would basically put them in a situation where they'd be trespassing in order to do that. So that was the only comment I wanted to make. That's the only issue I had with that one, and I apologize for not pointing it out.
Thank you.
Prior.
Certainly, it was a very good report. I'll turn that question to Deputy Clerk Sasha Helmke to make comment, please.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Councillor Cabral. We put that in the bylaw because currently it's township employees who maintain that road, that cemetery laneway, and we only maintain it up to the winter storage vault to allow for the funeral homes to utilize the winter storage vault. We don't maintain it past that area. If the plow operators do have some time, they might do a sweep, but it's not something that we can guarantee, and we don't want people to expect that type of service and possibly get stuck or not be able to get out of the area.
Sorry, I completely understand that. I'm not expecting them to plow the road. My wife's buried in Elmville, and they don't plow it in the wintertime there either, but at least I have access to go in there when I want to, and I'm just saying the way it's written right now, people can't even walk in. That was my concern, not to maintain it in the wintertime, but at least allow people the opportunity to enter in there. And the way it's currently written, they're not permitted.
Deputy Clerk?
Through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Cabral, if I rewrote it to more specify maintenance of the road so it doesn't indicate trespassing, would that be more amenable? Okay.
Now, does that require pulling it and making an amendment?
No.
No, we would just take those comments, good comments, into consideration, yep. Thank you. So we are voting on the motion that I read. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so we're dealing with 11.2. We've had some questions and discussions. Get a mover and a seconder to get it on the floor, please. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral. This is so Director Coleman, given the questions and discussions, and maybe you want to start us in discussion with respect to this further to the report that you submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I guess the only thing I could add that the public has not already added, in addition to several new homes on that stretch of the 4th, there are a couple of other pedestrian generators, such as the Canada Post mailbox and a community park. And as you're well aware, the 4th does not have any sidewalks. So staff reviewed the comments, reviewed the petition, reviewed the site, and we felt that a speed reduction was in order in this area.
Okay, council comments. Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just to comment myself, there's a lot of truck traffic as well. As we said, that we have some industrial area up to the north in Hillsdale, and that's basically the best route to get there. On top of that, I'm not sure if all 4 of the buses that go into Marnie are on Floss Road 4, but the bus stops are actually on the 4th. So in the wintertime, there are no sidewalks, there's the side banks, there's big trucks coming down, and you have a whole bunch of kids waiting. I know that we've been working with Peter Beacock for years trying to get the bus stops into the subdivision, but it's against the regulations for the consortium. So we're between a rock and a hard place, and I really hope that council can support making sure that this patch of the road, it's not the entire length, it's a patch of road approaching a stop sign where there's a high volume of children and families. We need to bring it down to 50.
Thank you. Other comments that haven't been made already? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you very much. I don't want to seem like I'm the bad guy here. I'm not saying that I necessarily oppose a reduction at that location. What I'm finding is that there's what I believe to be a distinct flaw in the process that is being used to address these locations. And when I've read the report, and this was after I'd already had some information from staff regarding a similar situation in my ward, and the problem that I'm having with it is that they are relying here on Section 128 of the Highway Traffic Act, which is a blanket piece of legislation to address situations where no posted speed limits or bylaws are in effect. And upon reviewing that bylaw in conjunction with our CAO, I had an opportunity to speak with them yesterday. I also alluded to the fact that the traffic calming policy was likely not the appropriate tool to use in these areas, because these were traditionally rural roads. They are main thoroughfares. They're not necessarily what one would consider a residential setting such as Phelpston might be or Anton Mills. The other aspect is at that particular location, Highway 27 or County Road 27 does drop down to 70 kilometers an hour. So I want folks to understand, I'm not necessarily against a speed reduction. My concern is that the way our policy is written right now, it gives the impression that the only speed reduction we can put in place is 60. In respect of the school buses, we have school buses that do stop on Highway 27 to pick up students. And we know that it's 80 kilometers an hour along there, as well as, say, Crosland Road. And while I appreciate the questions that came forth, it kind of does put me in a bit of a predicament, because my real issue here is with the way our current bylaw is written, how it's being interpreted, and interpreted in conjunction with the traffic calming policy. The traffic calming policy is really developed for urban residential areas. And that's how people seem to be accessing our staff when they have an issue regarding traffic going too fast. Traffic calming is in order to have people adhere to the speed limit that's posted or in effect in that area. And it's mostly suited to urban areas where people might be using a shortcut to get from one main road to another through an actual residential area, which in my case, I would think would be going up Floss Road 4 and turning actually right on Marnie Lane to get somewhere else to another main thoroughfare. So my concern isn't that this moves forward. My concern is that the way our policy is currently in place and the way our speed bylaw is currently written, it doesn't have a threshold or a mechanism for properly assessing these situations on our rural roadways to determine what the appropriate speed might be. So I'm not saying don't change it. What I'm saying is we need to review our policy and make it so that Section 128 is not being misinterpreted and used in this manner, because that's not the way it was designed. Because if you read further down in Section 128, you will find that Section 128 no longer applies when a municipality passes their bylaw. And the reason for that is when a municipality sees that maybe 80 kilometers is a bit too fast, they have the opportunity to pass a bylaw, which then negates Section 1. And that's my concern. So whether or not we move forward on this one, I would still like to see our speed bylaw reviewed and the traffic calming bylaw reviewed too, so that we have some bars, some thresholds, some assessment mechanism in place that takes into consideration the characteristics of the roadway, its original use and design, and set some criteria to ascertain what an appropriate speed might be. There are other municipalities where the speed is already 80 kilometers an hour. They will not even let someone submit a traffic calming request. So I'm just saying that I think our particular system right now is flawed in the sense that just about anywhere in the township where someone is residing for a couple of hundred meters, if there's 3 or 4 people living there and they have big lots, there are candidates to come and say, well, we want it 50 kilometers an hour here.
Okay.
If, you know.
So Councillor, maybe you'd think of wording something for items for future consideration to.
Actually, to be honest with you, Mayor Allen, I was going to ask that this be deferred until we were able to have staff review those two policies.
So are you
bring
proposing
them back to us.
an amendment?
I'm prepared to either make a motion that it gets reviewed by staff or ask that this be deferred with an amendment that staff come back to us with recommendations based on our current speed bylaw and our current traffic calming bylaw. The problem is that our current speed bylaw contradicts the Highway Traffic Act.
Okay, so you're proposing an amendment to this, and did you capture the wording, Deputy Clerk? And while that wording's been captured, Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. And I understand completely, Councillor Cabral, that we should always be reviewing and updating. However, I don't think that that update should impede on this at all. Whether or not there's 3 houses, we've had 3 new houses on the 4th go up in the last, I don't even know how fast those went up. So my concern is that this community, as each individual unique community, we hear it all the time about Springwater. We can't treat everything the same because it's not the same. Sometimes there's a Marnie Lane where the buses go in. We're not talking about 1 or 2 kids walking on a road. We're talking about a complete community. That portion of that Floss Road is a part of that community. So, I mean, unless we're gonna take a look and build some sidewalks and crosswalks and do everything else, all we're asking is to bring the speed limit down, to make it a little bit safer in this area. And this isn't the perfect option. This is just making it a little bit safer at the time. So I think that whatever bylaw we have in place, we're gonna be finding these unique situations because we take a look at Minising and anywhere. There's unique situations all over the place. So even if we have something that's written in black and white, there's always going to be those times where we have to take a look at this. And I know that there's no sign on the eastbound going out between the 27 and not, and the speed limit on 27 really doesn't impact what's happening on the 4th, in my opinion. I think that council really needs to not even consider. We need to do this.
Thank
I
you.
can't advocate for more than that.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I do agree with Deputy Mayor Coughlin. It is only a short distance between 27 and by Marnie Lane. My big concern would be the bus stop that stops there. What's the speed limit right now?
80. Excuse me. We'll answer, please. We don't need comments from the audience. Thank you. You had a chance at question period, so. Director Coleman, please.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The current speed limit in that section is 80 kilometers an hour.
Follow on.
Thank you. And is there like a population ratio, something where the community safety zone sign, is there like a criteria for it to have that?
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. There is a criteria. I would have to look it up and investigate that further.
Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Wherever we go in our municipality, there's just more traffic. And there's more traffic, there's more speed. I can be standing in front of the general store in Phelpson, we got the gravel trucks. I can go east of you to the 4th and the old 2nd. There's people flying through there. It don't matter where we go in the municipality. The concern that I have, Mayor Allen, we've implemented this traffic calming policy over the last couple of years since we've brought it in. So if we make the changes, what does it do to the ones we've already brought traffic calming into? Does it affect them as well too? Do we have to go back and revisit all those? So that's something we gotta think about when we're talking about this, so.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin? No. Sorry. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I want to say that down in Ward 4, we've got similar subdivisions, especially Snow Valley Way. We've got similar entrances and exits onto busy roads, and I get similar complaints all the time. So I would like to see some consistency. So I would like to see a better policy, if that's what we want to call it, or a consistent approach, whether we have to do studies. I would like to see the population census compared for these different subdivision type streets. So I would support deferring for more information because I feel like I would like a more consistent approach. That's all. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
And this is my last point, and thank you. So I agree that the consistency needs to happen on a township-wide, and that's why we came up with the township-wide traffic calming initiative, which is approved by council right now. And our residents are using the tool that we've given them to allow this to happen. It's meeting everything that they're asking it to meet. And while I agree that we can take a look at it, deferring this, which is consistent with what we're doing, I have no problem. I'll support moving forward and making sure that we take a better look and we have lots of expertise on it. But to defer this from that 50-kilometer sign from going up until after we take a look and revamp and go through that, I can't support that. So if we want to support the deferral, a separate notice of motion or whatever it is, I have no problem, but these signs need to go up.
Councillor Cabral?
Through you, Mayor Allen. Obviously, this is causing a bit of discourse, but in one respect, it's very much worthwhile because the way it's written right now, I could call up and say I could probably call up and say I want traffic calming in front of my place. And I really don't qualify, but certainly Crosland does. It's 80 kilometers an hour through there. Bayfield Street all the way down to County Road 26 fits the criteria. It should be 50 kilometers an hour too. And the problem is that we say 50. And what I'm saying is maybe 60 is more appropriate and it satisfies both ends of it given the circumstances and the flavor of that particular road. And so what I'm suggesting here is I'm prepared to, if this one is going to move forward, I'm prepared to put this down to items for future consideration, because the flaw here isn't with people requesting. The flaw is with the mechanism that's being used. Traffic calming is for residential urban areas. And although that was used in this particular situation, if you read our traffic calming bylaw, it does not speak to reduction in speed. It merely speaks to trying to calm the traffic down so they adhere to the current speed through various methods that obviously Floss Road 10 would not benefit from any of them unless you wanted to make it one way. So I'm prepared to withdraw my amendment, but I would still like to put it forward during items for future consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So the motion, as it is stated, is that the report from the operations coordinator regarding the speed reduction on Floss Road 4, east and west of County Road 27, dated September 4, 2019, be received, and that the speed on Floss Road 4 from 530 meters west of County Road 27 to 700 meters east of County Road 27 be reduced to 50 kilometers, as this area is deemed as built up under Section 120 of the Highway Traffic Act, and that the Director of Public Works be authorized to reduce the speed in accordance with the bylaw 2004-096 with respect to the regulation of the speed of vehicles on highways under the jurisdiction of the Township of Springwater. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Ritchie.
I just want to, while it's on the top of my brain and while we're talking about this, in Phelpston, there's one, it's either battery operated or it's solar powered. So as you come up, it's one of those, it tells you how fast you're going. I think they're a great mechanism, and that's something we might want to look at in our budget. For some of these areas, like at Fergusonville, you know, you go scooting along, oh geez, I better slow down, the cops might be here. No disrespect, but you know what I mean? But it kind of brings you to your senses, you know, so just a thought.
CAO Schmidt, maybe you could update with respect to the consideration vis-a-vis these speed monitors and what was presented. I believe it was, there's consideration for purchasing these for each ward. Can you update us on that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry. I believe that was part of a information report that came to council on August 7th regarding the small and rural funding efficiency funds. So that report will be coming back likely next meeting and or the first meeting in October. And in that, I believe there was a proposal to purchase speed radar signs, if you will, or speed boards. So.
Thank you. Councillor Cabral.
Yes, I unfortunately wasn't at the August meeting, but the reality of it is that council passed a motion prior to that coming out, sending it back to Public Works to explore the pricing and include offshore pricing from some Chinese manufacturers that were active in the North American market. So I was actually surprised to see that on that particular sheet, because it was something that was already in motion. And I was looking forward to seeing the report, because the numbers that I saw in there certainly didn't bear out the numbers that I'd seen online for the price of those signs. So I just want to add that comment because, as I say, I was very surprised to see it included there and the costs associated to it.
Well, maybe you can have further discussion with respect to that with Director Coleman. Yes, Clerk Chaparral?
Thank you. I just want to caution council that this isn't an item on the agenda right now, where there's actually no item before council for discussion or debate at this moment.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to information reports. Item 12, information reports. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Chapman, that the reports items listed herein be received as information. Anybody like to discuss or pull any one of these? Councillor Moore? 12.5. 12.5. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you. 12.1.3.
12.1.3. Okay, let's start with 5. Counselor, we're just discussing these, or you want them pulled?
Sorry, I wanted it pulled.
Pulled, okay. You want that
Discussion.
pulled? Discussion, okay. We'll start with 3, the Swaley Drain, Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, and through you, Marilyn. Just for clarification, when it talks about the final report and that an assessment schedule won't come forward until that final report is deemed to be required, does that mean that the assessment report is not being done at all right now?
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I think he has probably started working on it, but I don't think there's been anything finalized at this point. He has been waiting for the environmental report in order to proceed and to, I guess, determine costs associated with that, and then he would move on to the assessment for each.
Follow on.
It also states that notice of the preliminary report would be delivered to affected landowners. And we had this discussion last time that there's benefiting owners, there's affected owners, and there's also affiliated owners. So I just want to make sure that all benefiting, affiliated, and affected landowners are incorporated in that notice.
Can you confirm that, Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Yes, I will confirm that. I'll add that to Mr. Smart's list.
Thank you. Follow on.
Thank you. And then I also have 2 more, and I'm almost done. The 33% over tender pricing, is that when we tell residents what their portion could be, are we making sure that they're notified that it could be 33% higher with no further communication to them?
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I will have to confirm that. I can't answer that one at the moment.
Okay, one final.
Yes, and then it says here that assessment notice will be given if the final report is approved. So if the preliminary report hasn't been done yet, how is, this is why I'm I'm not a drainage expert, but I'm trying to make sure that I can answer the residents. No one has been asking them, or no one's working with our residents at this point, to my knowledge, on what portion of the drain they are being assessed. And it's looking like it's telling us we have 40 days at this point. We only have 1 year from that point. So I don't want this to be sprung on them, and there's only one opportunity for them to come forward during that portion to even appeal the assessment from our engineer, not our engineer, Ken Smart. So I'm just curious how, where we're at, and I know that the point of this was to provide council with an update as to where we are, but I'm not clear as to that. I mean, I still have too many questions.
Director?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So where we are right now is we are still waiting for the environmental report to be finalized and delivered to Mr. Smart. At that point, then he can proceed with the preliminary report. So we're not down that, and I think this states that these will be the next steps. Where we will go after that, we're not. We're still a bit of time off from that. I would expect in the coming months that we'll come forward with Mr. Smart's preliminary report, and at that point we'll have Mr. Smart here to lead us through how we will proceed.
Councillor Ritchie, did you have a question?
Yes, I did, Mayor Allen, and thank you to the Director of Public Works. The environmental report, is that a year-long, 4-season study that's taken into account in this particular project?
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Yes, as you recall, the NVCA required that we do the 4-season study to determine if there's any, I guess, showstoppers to working in that area.
Follow on.
This drain here is, it's over 100 years in history, and there's been multiple reports done. You mean to tell me that over the years and all the reports that are done, they couldn't have went and looked up these reports and came to some kind of a consensus without going through the process that we're going now? Like, is that a fair question to ask?
Director?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The issue was not so much that they wanted it done within the drain itself. What we need to do is the creek between the drain and the outlet is higher than the drain. So in order to work in the MVCA regulated lands that are not part of the drain, they're requiring that we do this study.
Follow on?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I would ask, I think all of council, that when that environmental report comes, we should be given the chance to read that, because there's a lot of money at stake here, and that's in a MVCA regulated land, and we pay them $250,000 a year, and they should be doing that,
Thank you.
and we're not. So I look forward to that report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the motion by Coughlin, seconded by Chapman, that the report items listed herein be received as information. Fire Department report, July 2019. The building permit activity summary, July 19. The Swaley drain update, the drinking water inspection report, Hillsdale and Phelpston, with the exception of 12.1.5 to be dealt with separately. All those in favor? Carried. 12.5, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Thank you, Director Coleman, for getting this report done. I was interested in the recycling of sand program that the City of Barrie had in place for the winter. So I have some questions, though, about the report. What I don't see is what it costs the township now to purchase sand. So I see you've done the comparison, or what your estimated cost would be if we did start to recycle our street sand, but I don't see what the cost of us in purchasing sand is right now.
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So to purchase winter sand for use throughout the winter, at 20,000 tons, I'm guessing it's about $180,000 to $200,000, depending on the price we get for the tender.
Sorry, so
Follow on?
I have three questions.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So then you're saying to recycle the sand is $123,000, but to purchase is $180,000 to $200,000. Is that correct?
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. That would be to recycle the portion of sand that we can recycle, which the City of Barrie has estimated to be about 1/3. So we would still have to purchase additional sand to make up that 20,000 tons that we would use for a season.
Okay.
Councillor Moore?
Second question then, and in your descriptions, it says to purchase material to build berms at the township pit would be $38,000. Comparing that to the City of Barrie, who doesn't have a pit, our pit is free. But then in the conclusion, it says the township currently recycles the winter sand, et cetera, used to build berms that are required as part of the pit license. So we're already building those berms. I'm not quite sure what this purchase material to build berms at our pit would be.
Director?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. That under the description, you're looking at the table.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that if we recycled our winter sand on the road, we would have to purchase material to build berms at the pit. So that's where the $38,000 would come from. If we were to recycle the sand for use on the road, we couldn't use it in the pit.
How come? Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry.
So the table outlines what the costs that we would incur if we recycled the sand for use on the road. So that would eliminate taking the sand back to the pit and building berms. So that would require us to now purchase new material to build the berms at the pit.
But do we just continue to never-endly build new berms? Do we not have berms that would eventually be high enough?
Yes, we do continually. It's because right now the pit isn't fully excavated. So as we excavate new areas, we have to build new berms, I guess.
Okay.
The best.
So then, is it your opinion, from what I'm reading, so recycling the winter sand would not be then of any financial benefit to the township? Are you saying that it would cost us? Because I just don't see that here.
Director?
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Yes, we are, and I mean, for all intents and purposes, we are recycling the winter sand. We're building berms at our pits. We're not recycling it to use on the road, but we're also not disposing of it in any manner. We are using it to build berms at the pit. So for all intents and purposes, we are recycling it. My opinion, through the investigation that I've done, is it would not be cost beneficial for the township to recycle it for use on the roads.
So just one more question. Thank you, Director Coleman, for that. At $200,000, though, to purchase sand every year, it's a huge amount of money. I would still like to look at a greener approach if we could, at least to reduce that cost somehow. If we could use some of that we're throwing on our berms, why can't we use that on our road? I'm not following why it's not possible.
Director Coleman, I know you probably saw trade booths at Roma and the other conference. Is technology, is technology changing or advancing with respect to road treatments? And I know that's very area specific, but.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Yes, there are new technologies out there. The newer technologies tend to be a little more costly than winter sand. You've probably seen the City of Barrie's use of like a corn syrup type material, a beet-based material. Those reduce the use of your salt, but they do not eliminate it. They are significantly more costly than a ton of sand or a ton of salt would be. In addition, we would need storage for that type of material. We have storage right now for salt brine, which we use in the winter sand to hold the sand on the road. But certainly to explore the new technologies, they are costly, and I tend to, it's easier for larger municipalities, I guess, to absorb that type of cost.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're dealing with item 12.1.5 and the motion with respect to that. It's just being finalized. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Moore and Councillor Chapman. That item 12.1.5 will be received for information. All those in favor? Carried. Next, we move on to verbal reports, starting with the official plan update and economic development update. Director Spagno.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. As Council is aware, there's been some suggested changes to the provincial policy statement. Staff will be preparing a report that goes over the changes to the PPS that are being proposed by the government at this point for the next council meeting. In addition to that, related to the official plan review, staff is taking a look at some scheduling dates to look to schedule the Section 26 public meeting regarding the official plan review update. This will be the public meeting where residents, stakeholders will have the opportunity to provide their comments regarding the discussion paper and the growth management strategies that have been online for quite some time. Staff is looking for late September or most likely sometime in October to have that meeting scheduled, at which point WSP, being the consultant working on the official plan review, will be providing for a presentation and receiving comments. On the economic development front, council will recall that, and is aware that the township upgraded and overhauled its website, which is a very large agricultural forum showcasing Berry Hill Farms, Springwater, and other agricultural operations in the area, and I think across Ontario. So it'll be a very big event at that location. That's just a brief summary of some of the things that are going on with economic development, and I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions of Director Spagnell on these matters? Okay, moving on to county updates. Deputy Mayor Coughlin? No updates because we haven't been meeting. There's a meeting next week, so we'll be back in full swing then. Municipal updates. Anyone have municipal updates? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. First, this Saturday is our official unveiling of the new safe station at Mills at 11:30, so all is welcome, which is also their fun day. They have a barbecue, games for the kids, a bake sale, and the barbecue is free with a food donation. It's a great turnout. I was there last year and everything was fantastic. Also, the past weekend was the Minisink Labor Day ball tournament. Once again, was very successful. We had 29. They had 29 teams. Weather was cooperated, and want to thank to all who volunteered. We had huge community hour support through our students that went into grade 9 this year. Kept the fields and surrounding areas very clean, and lots of compliments on them. To our residential, residents, community help, and to the Minisink Recreation Committee. Job well done.
Thank you. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you. Just wanted to comment on the Music in the Park throughout the summer. I didn't attend every single one, but I did attend a fair number of them, and there were a lot of people came by. It grew a little bit more popular as the summer carried on. It's over now, and it'd be interesting to see if it continues again next year. But the farmers market's still on till the end of September, so it's still viable, and it's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hanna.
Thank you. Through the chair to our Director of Public Works, while you were on a holiday, Ms. Coleman, council supported the stop signs on St. Vincent, but added a motion that the larger ones be added to increase the safety now that school's back and the buses are there. I just wondered if you could give us any idea when that would happen.
Director Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through to Councillor Hanna. I will check into it. I believe the signs have been ordered, but they probably just either haven't come in or be installed, but I will follow up.
Any other announcements? I have one. AMO conference was very good this year. CAO Schmidt and Deputy Mayor Coughlin and myself were down there in attendance. Good sessions, several delegations. You received in your package follow-up letters with respect to the 3 delegations, and we will continue to be following up on those. And when all the presentations are available, there'll be a more fulsome report with respect to that. But it was a good conference. Okay, moving on to notices of motion. Any notices of motion? Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn. I actually just have a question about an existing notice of motion. We have been continually talking about the ATVs and the policies changing at the province, and I'm just curious if I am required to put forward another notice of motion to keep this ball moving, or if the existing notice of motion that was put forward 18 months ago or whenever it was is still in effect.
Clerk Chaparral.
Thank you, through you. I would have to review the previous motion, and then we can discuss it to see if you, how you should be bringing forward another motion if required. And we could do that ahead of the September 18th meeting with the 7 days written notice, so that you wouldn't have to provide the notice at this meeting, and it would give us time to review the motion that was previously adopted.
Follow on?
Thank you, and I'm not sure, as it's not an item on the agenda, and through you to Clerk Chaperone, is staff able to provide residents with an update as to where we are sitting with this now? I know residents are very unsure as to whether or not they are allowed on the road, which loads they're allowed on, and even our detachments aren't sure in Springwater where they are to be enforcing, and curious as to when this is going to be resolved, because I think we can all agree that waiting for the province to make up their mind isn't always the best decision.
CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as far as I understand it, on August 7th, there was an information report provided to council from our former Director of Recreation, indicating that essentially staff's position was that although Bill 107 has been passed, the regulations relating specifically to off-road vehicles has yet to be put in force. So at that meeting, I believe it was indicated that staff's position would be remain status quo until the regulations are approved. With that said, we do have a bylaw in place which essentially determines which routes, if you will, or roads can be used for off-road vehicles. So that's essentially in place right now. So it isn't carte blanche, if you will. With that said, again, if council, subject to the notice of motion and clarification with Clerk Chaperone, if council wishes staff to proceed in lieu of the regulations, then we'll do so as directed by council. So.
Let's hear from Clerk Chaperone first.
Thank you, through you. So if it is for council to direct staff to proceed in lieu of Bill 107 or the regulations, then the previous motion wouldn't affect the submission of a new notice of motion to direct staff to continue with the project in lieu of the regulations.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, then I guess then I'm putting forward a notice of motion to proceed in lieu of, or whatever your wording was, that just keep the ball moving, because I think putting brakes on something that residents have been asking for 5 years, waiting to see if the regs come forward or not is, to me, we should still continue to work on this.
Okay, so
No, I don't, no, this is just notice, but thanks, guys.
crafting the wording, or? Get-
No,
No, just, okay, so we'll finalize that.
Finalize
Yeah, where?
No, there's no finalization, it's not a no.
Yeah, we're not finalizing the motion, she just notice of the motion. Did you have another comment, Clerk Chaperone?
Yes, thank you. And just as per our procedure bylaw, there cannot be any debate or real discussion surrounding this item until it becomes a motion at the next meeting.
This would be a question for staff then, Mayor Allen.
Councillor Cabal?
Yeah, I guess my question would be whether or not the provincial government is going to institute other regulations. They would certainly supersede whatever bylaw that this township put into place. So I'm actually curious to know why we put the brakes on it, would be whether or not we move forward and implement it. If they come up with something else, it's going to make ours null and void if it impacts it that way. So that would be my question to you, would be that.
CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Cabral. Again, having transitioned into the position, I think that was the direction of staff previously. But again, we can definitely bring something forward to council for consideration if that's what's being requested, which I believe is. So there's nothing to suggest that we can't do that. In addition to that, you may also recall that earlier this year there were 2 open houses, I believe, in March, and then also a survey was conducted. And so the intent would be is to try to encapsulate some of that information in a staff report as well to provide further input into a recommendation report to council.
Okay, so we move on to items for future consideration, and I believe we've got one crafted here. So the item for future consideration presented by Councillor Cabral, that the speed bylaw be reviewed by staff in conjunction with the traffic calming policy in order to determine and include assessment tools and processes to address speed limit reductions and appropriate range of speeds based on road type, location characteristics, and use by other users. Need a mover and a seconder, so it's Councillor Cabral, seconded by Councillor Ritchie. And any discussion or questions with respect to that? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you very much. Just in respect to that is, as I said, my concern is our present bylaw does not adequately address this, and seem to be using the traffic calming bylaw in rural settings, and that's not what the traffic calming bylaw is designed for, like traffic calming is for urban settings. So that's my concern, and that's why the motion's been brought forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Any other items for future consideration? Deputy Mayor Coghlan.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Please don't laugh, but there has been a change in Elmvale of a certain direction of an arrow, and I'm sure staff and local councillors have been hearing about it, and I don't know how to make the phone call stop. So I'm asking if we can send a letter to the county. When they repainted the lines, they changed it from one turning left to a different turning left, and it's causing backups to the 6th and the flow. So I would just like to somehow communicate to the county that they need to go and repaint those lines before.
Is that, Director Coleman, is that something that could be handled by your department and not be an item for future consideration?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Yes, that section of road is ours. I think there's, some future discussion maybe that needs to be had and some review. We have had the intersection camera up there, reviewing the backup. Unfortunately, we didn't necessarily review the backup before. I understand on Monday that it was backed up fairly far, but I also understand that Highway 400 was backed up past Port Severn as well. So this particular Monday may not be the best judge of how far the traffic backs up.
So we're currently assessing it, and we're going to be taking the appropriate action. So, Councillor Cabral?
Thank you. I'm not 100% sure here how many arrows we may have painted onto the ground, but if this is southbound 27 at the lights in Elmvale, the main lights, I've been monitoring that the entire summer because that was an issue that has been problematic for years. And the problem had always been that people making left-hand turns, if 2 or 3 of them made it, it would back up past Foodland. And it would also impact the cars turning at Kerr. And from my perspective, making it the same as the opposite side has actually worked out much better in our favor as far as that. So unless Monday was problematic, as you're saying the 400 was a problem and people were jumping off it, I don't think it would have mattered what was in place there. But I've heard the opposite, that and the only thing missing there is I was glad to see the lines went in is I think we were looking at putting a couple of signs up top. And the other thing was that in conjunction with the delegation that came that we voted on about the crosswalk was possibly to have an advanced green for both ways. Currently, there's only an advanced green for northbound, so people waiting left still have to wait for it to turn green. But the right-hand turn there from the right allowed everybody to continue to flow through. So it's got to be just the sheer volume of traffic because I've been watching it and I haven't seen that throughout the summer.
I would encourage Councillor Cabral and Deputy Mayor Coghlan to have further dialogue with Director Coleman and share their thoughts and experience and ideas and get this resolved. Thank you very much. Moving on to bylaws, item 16. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the bylaws, please? Deputy Mayor Coghlan, Councillor Cabral. That the bylaws listed herein be signed, sealed by the mayor and clerk, 219065 OPA 56, re Vespra Valley Estates Phase 3, 219066 Parkland Dedication, 2167 amend fees and charges, G&H Parkland Dedication and Planning Services Fees, 2168 open air burning, 5,293, 717350 Ontario Limited, Snow Valley Resort. 5,294, ZB 219006, Perry and Fulton. 5,295, ZB 219007, Re Berry. All those in favor? Carried. And confirmatory bylaw. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Chapman, Councillor Moore. That bylaw 21969 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on September 4, 2019, listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor?
Can I just mention the last one? I just forgot to include bylaw 5,296.
Oh, yes, sorry. In the previous one, the bylaw 5,296, re LH 219006, Cameron Estates, 453211 Ontario Limited, that was the addition that we talked about earlier, is included in that. Any problems with respect to that? So that's included in the vote. So confirmatory bylaw as read. All those in favor? Carried. And a mover and seconder to adjourn, please. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral. The regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 8:37 p.m. to meet again in a regular meeting on September 18, 2019 at 6:30 in the council chambers, Administrative Center in Minnesing. Yeah, we had a mover and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Coughlin and Councillor Cabral. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for joining.